The first hero in Europe who undertook a great journey was the leader of the quest for the Golden Fleece. He is Jason, a young man exuberating and daring, sets forth to gain the throne that is his birthright by bringing back the Golden Fleece of a ram, heavily guarded by a fearful dragon. His travels take him through strange and distant lands, from ancient Greeks to the shore of the Black Sea. On this quest, he has help from Hera, the queen of the gods and the wife of Zeus, and Aphrodite, the goddess of love. Unlike many other quests, Jason's story does not end happily. Jason performs heroically on the quest, but he does not, in the end, behave wisely and honorably.
The tale of the Golden Fleece begins with a Greek king named Athamas, who got tired of his wife, put her away, and married another, the Princess Ino. Nephele, the first wife, was afraid for her two children, especially the boy, Phrixus. She thought the second wife would try to kill him so that her own son could inherit the kingdom, and she was right. The second wife came from a great family. Her father was Cadmus, the excellent king of Thebes. Her mother and her three sisters were women of blameless lives. Princess Ino had thought up on an elaborate plan to do away with Phrixus.
To accomplish this plan, Princess Ino had to gather all of the corn seeds from Athamas' farm and then parch the seeds so that the crop would not grow, a task which she accomplished. When the king became aware of the crop not growing, he sent a messenger to an oracle to ask what he should do.
Princess Ino intercepted the messenger and persuaded, most likely through bribery, to say to the king that the crop would not grow unless the king offered up Prince Phrixus as a sacrifice. The people, threatened with starvation, forced the king to yield and permit the boy's death. When the boy had been taken to the altar, a wondrous ram with a fleece of pure gold snatched him and his sister up and bore them away through the air. Hermes had sent him in an answer to their mother's prayer. While they were crossing the strait which separates Europe and Asia, the girl, whose name was Helle, slipped and fell into the water. She was drowned, and the strait was named after her, the Sea of Helle. The boy came safely to land to the country of Caucasus, on the unfriendly sea or the Black Sea. The Caucasians were fierce people. Nevertheless, they were kind to Phrixus, and their king, Atys, let him marry one of his daughters. It seemed odd that Phrixus sacrificed to Zeus the ram that had saved him, in gratitude for having been saved, but he did so, and he gave the precious golden fleece to King Atys.
Phrixus had an uncle who was by rights a king in Greece, but had his kingdom taken away from him by his nephew, a young man named Peleus. The king's young son, Jason, the rightful heir of the kingdom, has been sent secretly away to a place of safety, and when he was grown, he came boldly back to claim the kingdom from his wicked cousin.
Peleus had been told by an oracle that he would die at the hands of kinsmen, and that he should beware of anyone whom would wear with only a single sandal. In due time, such a man came to town. One foot was bare, although in all other ways he was well clothed. None knew him, but one and another wondered who he was. Peleus became afraid when he saw the single sandal, for it was Jason, who was the one who only shewed one sandal. Jason told Peleus that he came to recover the kingdom that was rightfully his, and that the kingdom should be ruled rightly, without evil. Peleus agreed to hand over the kingdom, but under one condition. The condition was that the dead Phrixus wanted the golden fleece returned from King Atys, which would bring the spirit of Phrixus back to his home. Peleus asked that Jason go on the journey as opposed to himself, for he was old and Jason was young and strong. So Peleus promised to give up the kingdom on the return of Jason with the golden fleece.
The adventure begins. The idea of great adventure was so delightful to Jason. So Jason always has this adventurous spirit. So instead of thinking of it as a dangerous mission or a dangerous journey, he instead delightfully and joyfully accepted the challenge together with his troops called Argonauts. So these Argonauts is comprised with Heracles, the greatest of all heroes, Orpheus, the master musician, Castor, together with his brother Pollux, Achilles' father Peleus, and many another. Before them lays great perils, and some of them died. The first stop that Jason and the Argonauts had was on the island of Lemnos. This island is an island where only women live, because they have all killed the men in there, except with the king and the father of the leader among all women. So, do you know how this leader of women spare her father? Well, she just set him afloat on the sea in a hollow chest, which finally carried him to safety. So, can you imagine? Can you imagine that? You would put your own father in a hollow chest and let it set afloat on the sea and just wait until it reaches the shore. Can you imagine how despicable daughter that leader of the women was? So anyways, however and ironically, these women got so hospitable and generous towards the Argonauts and Jason. So maybe because they're handsome? Well, I don't know. Anyways, they give them good gifts of food and wine and so with garments. However, our ever loyal Hercules was left on the island because he got lost searching for his dear friend Hylas, who got somehow abducted by a water nymph. Their next adventure was with the Harpies, a frightful flying creatures with hooked beaks and claws who always left behind them a loathsome stench sickening to all living creatures. So these are like bird-like creatures who has this unwanted smell with them, like, yeah. So here they got to encounter Phineas, a wretched old man who has a gift of prophecy by Apollo, the truth teller. This poor old man has been inflicted with a terrible punishment from Zeus, which is wherever and whenever he tries to dine, the Harpies, who were called the hounds of Zeus, would swoop down and defile the food, leaving it so foul that no one could bear to be near of it, much less eat it. So because Phineas was a fortune-like teller, so the arrival of the Argonauts and Jason has long been prophesied by Phineas. So Phineas knew already that a group of men would come to him and would be able to save him from his punishment. Nevertheless, indeed, Boreas' sons, one of the group of Argonauts, had saved him from the devouring Harpies, and he was able to eat with joy along with the Argonauts. Next to the foul Harpies is the Clushing Rugs. In return of the help they had done to Phineas, he told them about the dangers before the Argonauts. So in special about the Clushing Rugs, the Symplegades that rolled perpetually against one another while the sea boiled up around them. So this was quite really hard. However, Phineas gave them wise advice, and that was to have the dove pass over the Clushing Rugs. If the dove passed through it safely, possibilities for them to pass to would be great. However, if it's contrary, then they wouldn't have a chance and would be better to just go back and forget the golden fleece. However, the next morning, the Argonauts, with so much determination, they started sailing, of course, with a dove, and were soon in sight of the great rolling rocks. It seemed impossible that they could be a way between them, or there could be a way between the clutching rocks. But they followed Phineas' advice, so they had freed the dove and watched it flew through and came out safe. Only the tips of her tail feathers were caught between the rocks as they rolled back together, and those were torn away. The heroes went after her as swiftly as they could. The rocks parted, the rowers put forth all their strength, and they too came through safely. Just in time, however, for as the rocks clashed together again, the extreme end of the stern ornament was shorn off. By so little, they escaped destruction. But ever since they passed them, the rocks have been rooted fast to each other and have never anymore brought disaster to sailors.
The Amazons.
Not far from there was a country that only women lived. They are called Amazons, the warrior women. They are the daughters of Harmony, the most peace-loving nymph, and Ares as their father, the terrible god of war. As they arrived, the heroes gladly stopped and have a close battle with the Amazons. The wind was favorable, so they hurried on. They realized that they stopped for nothing, but that the same day they reached the country of the Golden Fleece, the Colchis.
The heroes arrive at Colchis.
As they arrive at Colchis, they knew that their only weapon is their valor. However, Hera did something to make their journey safe. Hera approached Aphrodite for a help and begged for her aid. So they planned to make Medea, the daughter of Colochian king, fall in love with Jason with the help of Cupid, Aphrodite's son, the god of love. Medea knew how to work very powerful magic and could undoubtedly save the Argonauts if she would use her dark knowledge for them. In return, Aphrodite would give Cupid a lovely plaything, which is a ball of shining gold with deep blue enamel. Cupid gladly accepted the favor and go to Colchis. Meantime, upon arriving at the city, the heroes were safe from any trouble on the way, because Hera helped them and wrapped them in a thick mist. With that, they reached the palace unseen. The thick mist was dissolved at the time they arrived at the entrance.
Medea pursed with love.
When they arrive at the palace, they receive a warm welcome with the hot water for bath, and they even prepared food for them. Princess Medea was curious to see the visitors, so she came to see them, and her eyes was landed to Jason. It is the perfect time for Cupid to do his work, so he swiftly drew his bow and shot a shaft deep into Medea's heart. Medea hurriedly go back to her chamber and realized that she fall in love to Jason. After cleaning themselves, while eating and drinking, King Aeetes asked who are they and the reason for their arrival. According to Zeus' law, it was accounted great discourtesy to put any question to a guest before his wants has been satisfied. This concept is very important in many Greek tales. But still, Jason answered that they were all the noblest birth, sons of God's sons of the gods. who had sailed from Greece in the hope that he would give them the golden fleece in return for whatever service he would ask for them. After hearing Jason's response, King Aetes filled with anger. In silence, he pondered what he should do, and a plan came to him.
The test of the dragon's teeth. King Aetes told Jason that he bore no grudge against brave men, and if they prove themselves such, he will give them the golden fleece. King Aetes set Jason a series of impossible tasks before he would let him take the golden fleece. He was to yoke a pair of brazen-footed, fire-breathing bulls and plow a field. In the furrows, he was to sow dragon's teeth and kill the armed men who would spring up from the teeth. For a time, Jason sat speechless. The contest seemed impossible beyond the strength of anyone, but then he answered that he will make the trial, even he doomed himself to die. Returned to the ship, the heroes held a council, and all of them urged Jason to let him take the trial upon himself. As they talked, there came to them one of the king's crowned sons, whose life Jason had once saved, and he told them of Medea's magic power, and that there was nothing she could not do. Medea's magic. Medea sat alone in her room, weeping and telling herself she was shamed forever because she cared so much for a stranger that she wanted to yield to a mad passion and go against her father. She put the casket away and determined to use her power for the man she loved, Jason. She had a magic ointment which would make him who rubbed it on his body safe for that day. Medea then looked for her nephew, the prince whom Jason had helped. She met him and agreed all at once that she will help Jason. Without any delay, Medea and Jason then meet in a certain place. Silently, she drew the box of ointment from her bosom and gave it to him. Medea spoke and told him how to use the charm, and that when it was sprinkled on the weapons, it would make them as well as himself invincible for a day. When they reached the field where the king and the Colchians were waiting, the bulls rushed out from their lair, breathing forth flames of fire. Terror overcame them. But Jason withstood the fearful creatures. He forced first one and then the other down on its knees and fastened the yoke upon them. And over the field he drove them, pressing the plow down firmly and casting the dragon's teeth into the furrows. As soon as the crop was springing up, men bristling with arms came rushing to attack him. Jason remembered Medea's words and flung a huge stone into their midst. With that, the warriors turned upon each other and fell beneath their own spears. Jason's contest was ended in victory, bitter to King Aeetes. The king went back to the palace, planning treachery against the heroes and vowing they would never have the golden fleece. But Hera was working for them. She made Medea all bewildered with love and misery, determined to fly with Jason. That night, Medea sped along the dark path to the ship and told them that they must get the fleece at once and then make all haste away, or else they will be killed. They went where Medea directed and reached the sacred grove where the golden fleece hung. The guardian serpent was very terrible, but Medea approached it fearlessly, singing a sweet magical song, and charmed it to sleep. Swiftly, Jason lifted the golden wonder from the tree, and, hurrying back, they reached the ship as dawn was breaking. The strongest were put at the oars, and they rowed with all their might down to the river into the sea.
The murder of a brother. So by now what had happened was known to the king, with how Jason, Medea, and the Argonauts got the golden fleece. He sent his son in pursuit, Medea's brother, Absyrtus, to block their escape along the Danube River. So he led an army so great that it seemed impossible for the little band of heroes, or what we called the Argonauts, either to conquer it or to escape. But then Medea saved them again, this time by a horrible deed. She killed her brother. In some versions, it is said that she sent him word that she was longing to go back to her home and that she had a fleece for him if he would meet her that night at a certain spot. So of course, he came all unsuspecting, and Jason struck him down, and his dark blood dyed his sister's silvery robe as she shrunk away. Then with its leader dead, the army scattered in disorder, and the way to the sea lay open to the heroes. On other versions, they say that Absyrtus set sail on the Argo with Medea, although why he did was not explained so, and that it was the king who pursued them. And then as his ship gained on them, Medea herself struck her brother down, and cutting him limb from limb, dismembered him and threw the body parts at the sea. The king, her father, stopped gathering all the pieces and gave his son a proper burial, and Argo was saved. Then by then, the adventures of the Argonauts were almost over. And one terrible trial we had while passing between the smooth, sheer rock of Scylla and the whirlpool of Charybdis, wherein the two monsters are said to live opposite each other, and no ship could pass that stretch without being attacked by either one of them. But Hera had seen to it that sea nymphs should be at hand to guide them and send the ship on to safety. Next came Crete, where they would have landed but for Medea. She told them that Talus lived there, the last man left of the ancient bronze race, a creature made all of the bronze except one ankle, where alone he was vulnerable. He throws stones at ships of unwanted visitors. Even as she spoke, he appeared terrible to behold, and threatened to crush the ship with rocks if they drew nearer. They rested on their oars, and Medea, kneeling, prayed to the hounds of Hades, or what is commonly known as Cerberus, that is a multi-headed dog, to come and destroy him. The dread power of evils heard her. As the bronze man lifted a pointed crag to hurl it at the Argo, he grazed his ankle, and the blood gushed forth until he sank and died. Then the heroes could land and refresh themselves, for the voyage still before them. So next would be the murder of a father. Then upon reaching Greece, which is about 683.8 kilometers away from the island of Crete, they disbanded, each hero going to his own home. And Jason with Medea took the golden fleece to Pelias the king. But they found that terrible deeds has been done there. Pelias had forced Jason's father to kill himself, and his mother had died of grief. And despite being in possession of the golden fleece, Pelias was not willing to give up the throne. Then Jason, bent upon punishing the wickedness, turned to Medea for the help which had never failed him. She brought about the death of Pelias by a cunning trick. To his daughters, who he called Peliades, she said that she knew a secret, how to make the old young again. And to prove her words, she cut up before them a ram worn out with many years, and put the pieces into the pot of boiling water. Then she uttered a charm, and during the demonstration, a live young ram jumped out of the pot. So, of course, the maidens were convinced of the trick shown to them by Medea. And Medea gave Peleus a potent sleeping draught and called upon his daughters to cut him into bits. So they were very excited to make their father young again. So the girls cut their father into pieces and threw them into a boiling pot, with the expectation that their father would emerge rejuvenated. But of course, their father Peleus did not survive. And at last, the dreadful task was done. They looked for Medea to speak the magic words that would bring him back to them and to his youth. But she was gone, gone from the palace and the city. And the three daughters, who were horrified, realized that they were fooled and that they were their father's murderer. Jason was revenged.
Now, let me introduce to you the characters of this chapter. First, Creon, the king of Corinth, father of Glauce. Second is Glauce, Corinthian princess, daughter of King Creon, to whom Jason married. And lastly, Jason and Medea's sons. Now, I am going to discuss about the betrayal and Medea's revenge. So, it means that Medea had gone wrong, because she was blinded by her love to Jason. Even feeling guilty of losing her family and country felt a little thing to her. Her anguish and jealousy made her say terrible things, which is the reason why she and her sons were exiled. Jason blamed Medea for her exile, and there Medea's wrongs burst. She told him all the things she had done for him, especially in his journey in getting the golden fleece. Being guilty of everything made her miserable. But Jason only told her that it was Aphrodite who saved him, not her. And he had done very well for her, letting people know of her help. Medea was angry towards Jason, so she refused his gold, even help from him. Medea set herself for revenge through death. So, she first killed Glauce by letting her sons give the gift, which is a lovely robe, anointed with deadly drugs. And to show that she accepted the gift, she must wear it at once. There, she wore the robe, which suddenly fired up that made her melted away. And because of what she did, she was afraid of her son's safety. She didn't want her sons to be slaves, so she decided, since she is the one who gave them life, then she is the one that should give them death. So she killed them with her own hands. She forgot that they were her sons. So when Jason arrived, so determined to kill her, the two boys were already dead. And there, he saw Medea at the roof of the house, carried away by the dragons.